You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. It's LSU Bama week. Brian Kelly and Nick Saban both met with reporters on Monday, and these two teams find themselves in a familiar spot where they were a year ago, where this game, as it has been a familiar spot for these two teams for the better part of a decade now, that this game is the one that everyone points to in November as ultimately the battle for the SEC West. Although I think this game now has a decidedly different feel than it would have a month ago. A month ago, LSU's defense was floundering amid really, the worst stretch any of us had seen, rivaled only by 2020. And the Alabama offense was similarly and uncharacteristically bad. They were rotating quarterbacks throughout the first month of the season, really trying to find their identity. And now as the calendar flips to November, both of these teams, it's pretty clear what they are. LSU has steadied itself defensively. They're not good, but they've steadied themselves from an historically bad pace. Meanwhile, they are the best offense in college football. Alabama has a defense which is starting to look more like an Alabama defense, sixth nationally in total defense, and an offense that has found a way to maximize what it does best. One of the factors in this game that we didn't spend really any time last week talking about as we were scratching the surface on this matchup is the Brian Kelly, Tommy Rees dynamic. Remember, Tommy Rees, the Alabama offensive coordinator, played for Brian Kelly at Notre Dame and left Notre Dame as one of the more decorated quarterbacks in that program's history. He played in 45 games with 30 starts. He threw for over 7,000 yards in his Notre Dame career. He was the starting quarterback in he was injured, but lost his job in 2012, the year where Notre Dame played Alabama in that national championship game, coincidentally, in 2012. And as a coach, Tommy Rees, when his playing days were over, he went to Northwestern in 2015, spent a year with the Chargers in 2016. Then Brian Kelly brought him to South Bend, and he's been there from 2017 on. And remember, when Brian Kelly got the LSU job, he tried to bring Tommy Rees with him to LSU. And Tommy Rees stood up in front of the Notre Dame team and talked about this being home and where he wanted to be. And so he stayed in South Bend under Marcus Freeman. Well, that loyalty lasted one season because when Nick Saban and Alabama came calling, Tommy Rees made that jump. And so he's in his first season as the offensive coordinator there. So Brian Kelly is going to face off against his former player and assistant coach, Tommy Rees, who's the OC at Alabama. And I thought it was interesting because if you're Brian Kelly, knowing that Rees played for you and spent the majority of his coaching career on your staff, most of what Tommy Rees is as an offensive game caller, play caller, organizer, is rooted in what you are. So I think that's a pretty significant advantage to LSU in scouting Alabama this week. Because everything Tommy Rees is, Brian Kelly probably knows what he's going to do, what his tendencies are going to be. You could say the shoe's on the other foot as well, that Tommy Rees may have that inclination of Brian Kelly, but it's the old saying that the teacher doesn't teach the student everything. Always keep a few tricks up your sleeves. But I asked Brian Kelly on Monday about his relationship with Tommy Rees, and as you would imagine, he said he had glowing praise.
There's a connection there. He played for me. We've got a deep connection relative to a player-coach relationship, and then a respect for him as a coach and what he's done in this profession at an early age. He's somebody that I have a lot of respect for in what he's done, certainly at Notre Dame, and then in a very short time taking an offense and transforming it quickly during the season.
The second part of that is where I also want to shift to, where Brian Kelly said he's taken an offense and transformed it during the season. And he's right. And it's a pretty impressive job that he's done to this point. Here first was Kelly talking about sort of the hallmark of this Tommy Rees offense at Alabama.
His teams are going to be physical. They're going to run the football. They're going to push the ball down the field. And they're going to, more than anything else, they're going to utilize their personnel as he'll mold the offense to fit the personnel. And I think that's what smart coaches do. And, he's an outstanding football coach.
He'll mold the offense to fit the personnel. That is undeniably what Tommy Rees has done as this season has progressed in South Bend. In Tuscaloosa. If I ask you what is Jalen Milroe, most people immediately are going to say he's a runner. And he is a dynamic runner. We have seen Jalen Milroe as an explosive, dynamic runner, undeniable. A year ago when Bryce Young got hurt and Jalen Milroe went in against Arkansas, he busted off that 77-yard touchdown run, and it was like, oh, okay. Jalen Milroe is a phenomenal athlete. And at the start of this season, he was a runner. They were trying to work Jalen Milroe as a runner into their offense. And their offense wasn't good. Against Middle Tennessee in the opener, he carried it 7 times for 48 yards. You were playing a completely outmanned opponent. And then week 2, they played Texas. And Milroe ran it 15 times for 44 yards. That's 15 offensive snaps dedicated to your quarterback running the football. And he got you 44 yards. Averaged 2.9 a carry. They lost that game. He was benched against South Florida, and he comes back for the SEC opener against Ole Miss. 16 carries for 28 yards. He was sacked 4 times. So obviously the sack yardage is negated out of the rushing total. But his long was 20. And then against Mississippi State, 11 carries for 69 yards. He busted off a long of 53. But the last 3 weeks is what you've seen in the evolution of this Alabama offense. The last 3 weeks is where it's been very clear that what they are doing with Milroe is very different. And Brian Kelly talked about that today.
I think at first there was this sense that he was just going to run all over the place, right? This is going to be a running quarterback. But he's not. I mean, he is a threat to run. There's no doubt about that. And he can go from 0 to 60 as well as anybody. But he's going to stand in the pocket. He's going to throw the football. And the way they create offense is through a balance of running the football, formationing you so you can get some shots down the field. And he throws the ball well. I mean, he throws the ball well. And he can hit the open targets. He can push the ball down the field. And so I think what he's done really well is when he's been given the opportunity to take shots down the field, he's hooked up. He hasn't missed receivers. And I think that's been impressive.
The Texas A&M game was a great example of that. 21 of 33 for 321 and 3 touchdowns, a long of 52. Against Arkansas, just 10 of 21. 10 of 21. He was less than 50% completion. But he threw a 79-yard touchdown pass. He threw for 238 and 2 scores on 10 completions for 238 yards. Against Tennessee, just 14 completions for 220 and 2 touchdowns. The long of 46. Meanwhile, in those 3 games, Milroe's rushing totals, he's gone Against A&M, 8 carries for negative 31. He was sacked 6 times, but his long was 12 yards. Against Arkansas, 11 for negative 19. He was sacked 5 times, but his long run against Arkansas was 7 yards. Against Tennessee, 9 carries for 3 yards, was sacked 4 times, but his long was 15. Jalen Milroe isn't running anymore. Teams are saying, we're just going to keep you here and make you throw it out of the pocket. And he's not very accurate. On the season, he's completed 64%. But again, that game against Arkansas, he completed 47% of his passes. Against Texas, 51% of his passes. 66% against Tennessee, was 14 of 21. He's not going to, Jalen Milroe isn't going to go 28 of 33. He might go 10 of 21, but if 2 of those completions are for 50 plus, that's how he's beating you. So the key is for LSU, you got to do what everybody else has done. Take advantage of a bad Alabama offensive line and pressure Jalen Milroe. And contain him. Don't let him bust off a 70-yard run. They're not going to have designed run plays for Jalen Milroe. That's not what they do anymore. They're going to run in their traditional sets with McClellan and with Williams, two good running backs. And Milroe's going to scramble when he has to. But over the last month of the season, that hasn't been what's beaten teams. It's been good defense and connecting on the deep ball when he's had that opportunity. This is a game where LSU's defensive front, you control that running game so you don't have to commit numbers to the box, because if you have to commit numbers to the box to control the running game, now you're vulnerable on the back end. And if this LSU defense is vulnerable on the back end, you're going to give up big plays. Can you stop the run? Can you contain Milroe with your base formation? And can your safeties play big and not prevent the big 50, 60, 70-yard pass play? For LSU's defense, it's that simple. Executing it is a very different question. And we'll see on Saturday if they're able to down your best cover corner in Zy Alexander, running a bunch of freshmen out there. That's the blueprint. Brian Kelly told you. It's not going to be Jalen Milroe running the ball. It's going to be Jalen Milroe throwing the deep ball, and can you stop that deep connection, the one play big bomb, because he's really good at it. And a real credit to Tommy Rees for evolving as the season has gone along to realize what they do well, because in the first month of the season, this offense was not good. And I'm not telling you they're great now, but their offense has become efficient enough to complement a really good defense and allowed them to be undefeated right now in conference play in the driver's seat in the SEC West with LSU coming in on Saturday. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.